During her 60-minute interview, the same reporter asked her why she wasn't ahead in the polls. Let's take a listen to her response there.
Why are you not 30 points ahead?
Well, I'm not a political pundit, so I'm not going to speak to that. But what I will say is this. I think the choice is going to be clear. Bill, we're going to win. Let me just tell you that. We're going to win.
She said she can't answer that because she's not a political pundit. More like she can't answer that because she has no clue how to be a vice president, hence the reason she has the lowest polls in history. I mean, what do you think, Eric?
I think we should take, look at all her usual answers to all questions. Maybe she should say, when we talk about the pollsters in the community, we are talking about pollsters in the community. She doesn't have maybe she should have said Biden and I will work together to continue to work together to address these issues, to tackle these issues, and to work together as we continue to work, operating from new norms and agreements that we will convene together and work on. You take away her staple answers, moving forward, unburdened from the future or unburdened by the past as she moves into the future, and she doesn't really have a lot to say. So I'm not surprised this was her answer. She doesn't really have a lot to say here. She doesn't want to delve into the reasons that she's unpopular.
Yeah, she certainly doesn't. It's probably best she avoid it, too, because that would reveal a lot of information. But it was funny to see her kind of try to attempt to answer that one. All right, Eric, now while we're staying on the topic of California Democrats here, there is a video going viral this week of California Governor Gavin Newsom playing basketball with a bunch of children during his recent trip to China. I want to play that one for you, and then we'll come back for your reaction. I could not stop watching this video. I had this on repeat for hours the other day. It's just so funny. But also, Eric, can you imagine if this was, I don't know, let's say Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, or really any Republican leader for that matter? I think the left would be melting down, probably calling this child abuse. I mean, am I right here?
Yeah, the media would be all over it. I mean,
Yeah.
just think what they've done with DeSantis in his boots, for goodness sake, and the way he walks into a room. So, I mean, this was clearly a charge, but, Democrats don't have to play by the rules.
Right.
So, there was no call there. It was nice to see all the communist kids out playing together, though. You have to admit, all the communists playing together, it was a wonderful thing. I think Gavin Newsom was pretty much just bringing his California plan over to China and getting the kids used to sleeping on the pavement. Lay down on that pavement. Get used to it, because there's a lot of people out in the streets in California. Why is he out there?
I don't know.
Why is he out there other than he's trying to push for a presidential bid? It seems fairly obvious.
That is the obvious answer to me. I don't know. He might tell you otherwise, but it's been interesting to watch nonetheless. All right. Lastly here, Eric, an NYU professor by the name of Scott Galloway was recently on Bill Maher talking about COVID and the scamdemic lockdowns. Let's take a listen to what this gentleman had to say, and then we will discuss right after.
I was on the board of my kid's school during COVID. I wanted a harsher lockdown policy, and in retrospect, I was wrong. The damage to kids of keeping them out of school longer was greater than the risks. But here's the bottom line. Myself, our great people, the CDC, I'd like to think the governor, we were all operating with imperfect information, and we were doing our best. So
Let's learn from it.
Let's learn from it. Let's hold each other accountable. But let's bring a little bit of grace and forgiveness in that that was COVID.
Yeah.
So let's not forget, Eric, these are the very people that wanted harsher lockdowns, but now years later, they finally realized they were wrong. So now they want forgiveness. I'm sorry. I have a really hard time giving grace to those who rallied to rescind our freedoms, did irreparable harm to the next generation, let people die alone in hospitals, fired hardworking Americans who didn't want to take an experimental shot, and literally wished death upon people like you and I. I mean, where does this idiot get off asking for forgiveness?
Yeah, it seems a lot of the leftists that, scoff at the Bible are looking for a lot of forgiveness and grace all of a sudden. Those people that have that particular position. And it's hard to give it when you look at Fauci and the CDC and Cuomo, who's sitting there with him. They squashed dissenters. You couldn't dissent. You couldn't. They collaborated with big tech to silence people who spoke out against this. They ruined people's lives. They closed people's businesses. It's going to be more than just, a little grace. And he says, well, we should be held accountable. He never says how.
Yeah.
They should be held accountable. How should you be held accountable? Perhaps we can move on to grace and forgiveness when we find out how you should be held accountable. Just saying, well, I said it. I guess I was wrong. I'm sorry. People's lives were ruined. People couldn't go to church. They couldn't go visit sick people at hospitals, sick relatives. There was a lot of damage done here.
Just immense damage, and it's just really, really incredible. As you mentioned, the ones who seemingly hate the Bible are now the ones asking for forgiveness. I would like to see a plan there as to how they should be held accountable. As you mentioned, I have some ideas in mind, but I won't mention those today. Eric, Scheiner, we're all out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us and weighing in. I always appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.